Our third speaker this afternoon is Mark Vandermaas. Mr. Vandermaas is a former UN peacekeeper. He left his real estate brokerage career in 2006 to become a full-time activist in Caledonia. Vandermaas was one of the original founders of the Canadian Advocates for Charter Equality, along with Gary McHale, and co-authored several key reports. He was the leader of the Ipperwash Papers project and has written more than 340 articles for his blog voiceofcanada.ca. His work has been used or cited by politicians, academics, and the media. After 3.5 years of Caledonia activism, Mark left CANASA in February 2010 to found the independent Caledonia Victims Project that is documenting the experiences of the residents of Caledonia. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. My presentation is Listening to Victims, a fresh approach to healing and reconciliation. The image of the dancer in the Caledonia Victims Project logo is a tribute to a 14-year-old girl named Pam Dudich, who loved to dance before the occupation of the Douglas Creek Estates. She is, for me, a symbol for all of Caledonia's victims, both Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal. Try this. Pam lives on the 6th line in Caledonia, which borders the occupation site. The Ontario Provincial Police, the OPP, withdrew policing service from Pam Street on April 20th, 2006, after hundreds of native occupiers attacked them while they were trying to enforce a court order. Police were injured after being attacked with clubs, crowbars, axes, a chainsaw, and socks filled with rocks. Mr. McHale has approximately 1,000 hours of audio recordings of radio transmissions proving that occupiers have authorized the shooting of civilians and police straying too close to the site and have interfered with ambulance crews, among other things. We met Pam in March 2007. She had produced a heartbreaking pamphlet for a school project that she called Road of Hope, Help the 6th Line. And she wanted the world to hear her words of pain. Here's an excerpt from that. You can't call the police because they can't help you. You're locked in your own home. A few days later, when it calms down, you have to go to school. But you can't get to school by bus anymore, so you have to drive a 30-minute ride to school when it only took 2 minutes unless you went through the blockade. But you could only do this if you had a pass. But even when we got one, it was whether they felt like letting you go through or not. If they did let you go, it was like you were in prison. Gates everywhere, men with masks over their faces, only to see their eyes, men holding bats, some even with guns. It was a living hell. I had to live through that. You don't know what life is like until you have lived through it. I'm a competitive dancer and love to dance outside on the lawn, but I wasn't able to unless I could take the pressure of getting stares or firecrackers thrown at me. Now I take medication and go to counseling because of all this. A 14-year-old should not be doing that. It's these things that hurt because it's not just my family in pain, it's all of ours on the 6th line. There are 7 children on this road ranging from 10 months to 15 years old. It's very sad when the 14 and 15 years old are told that if ever a native came into our house and tried hurting us, and we defended ourselves by fighting back, we would be the ones arrested, not the native. I'm 14 years old, and I will fight with as much power as I have to get police and justice back on my road. The OPP threat to arrest non-native victims was common to both Haldimand County and in Ipperwash. Pam's mother showed me the paths the natives forced them to carry, as well as a photo of 2 of the 7 deer carcasses hung by the occupiers on a lamp pole near their home between October and December 2006. Her diary entry for October 30th at 3:50 p.m. notes this about the 5th carcass. Quote, between yesterday at 1:30 and now, the deer was taken down, skinned, and beheaded, and then hung back up. Mayor called, end quote. She wrote me later saying, quote, seeing the deer each time gave you a sickening feel in your gut. When we released Pam's story, we were immediately accused of fabricating it by occupation supporters. Journalists from outside Caledonia refused to tell her story, despite her personal appearances at a news conference at the Ontario Legislature, and again at our pre-election Remember Us March in 2007, where that first picture of her was taken. Christy Blatchford became the first non-Caledonian journalist to tell part of the Dudage story in January 2010. This picture is taken right beside, close to Pam's house. The shocking revelations from OPP testimony at the trial for the now settled Brown-Chatwell lawsuit, confirming that the Haldimand Detachment Commander of the OPP was ordered not, repeat, not, to arrest rioting natives, who he said were being emboldened by the lack of police response, made national headlines. A resident asked me to deliver this message to you today. This is part of it. Quote, "The police and firemen were hiding behind my house while a group of natives, in brackets terrorists, were lighting a fire behind my house. They said to my neighbor and myself, 'We cannot protect you or touch them.' We were and are still treated as shit by the police. My trust in our system is gone forever." Residents were forced to stand guard one night at the home of a 92-year-old World War II veteran because OPP officers refused to stop native occupiers from throwing rocks at his house. This war hero later showed me one of the rocks and tearfully told me, quote, "I spent 5 years in hell for this country, and now I don't even know if the police will protect me. It wasn't worth it." Residents have observed that the OPP's major events liaison team were not filing incident reports. According to an August 16, 2006 entry in her victim impact statement, one wrote, quote, "The residents of Caledonia now realize that MELT does not use file numbers, nor do they inform the OPP of complaints. How convenient. On paper, it appears as if nothing is happening here." Pam's mother shared her feelings about the recent return of OPP policing. And I want you to remember, it's been almost more than 3 years since they actually had policing on this street. "We have lost 4 years of our lives, which we will never get back. I feel like Canada has let us down big time. For a land that is supposed to be free, we are prisoners of war who have been left to deal with this predicament on our own. As for policing back down here, yes, it's true. Do we feel any safer? No." False accusations by occupation supporters of being racists and white supremacists were common against residents and non-natives. An intimidation campaign that continues to this day and has included, against us personally, torture and death threats, racial slurs, and physical assaults. This charming cartoon says, "Are you white? Are you a complete failure? Do you want to avoid responsibility for your failure? Did citizens of Caledonia become a white supremacist? Boycott racism." Kevin Clark, coward of Haldimand County. KKK attempt to hide the theft and plundering of a continent behind the word justice. And physical assaults of Gary McHale and an associate of Canada's, founder of Canada's, Jeff Parkinson, in the hospital after being attacked by Six Nations people. The OPP commissioner testified in 2008 that he meets with Native protesters, but never with non-Natives. After Gary McHale was sent to hospital in December 2007, after being swarmed by Six Nations residents, the commissioner was photographed sharing a joke with the man who led the attack. But he refused Mayor Trainor's September 2009 request to meet with Six Line residents, which would have included Pam Dudage's family. Non-Natives who speak up have been targeted for public insults by the Ontario government and for arrest. These pictures are of 4 of us who are actually trying to raise or walk with a Canadian flag near the occupation site, arrested. And even Police Services Act charges by the OPP. And this was done against a Hamilton police officer who criticized the OPP and the Ontario's premier. In Mr. McHale's case, the OPP repeatedly targeted him for false arrests, a campaign that eventually resulted in charges of obstructing justice against a deputy commissioner and a superintendent, as well as a charge of influencing municipal officials against the commissioner himself. OPP officers have actually visited hall owners to intimidate them into canceling our room rental agreements.